Hello and welcome to Retro Reviews, my channel where I review my favorite retro video games of all time, as well as some modern releases I have recently finished. Today is usually my modern video game review, but because of some new news that just popped up, I really wanted to talk about this first. I'm going to be doing my modern review tomorrow. Instead, I want to talk about some more Switch 2 news, stuff that I just didn't think would be happening so frequently, but I'm going to be talking about it pretty much every week if they keep this up. An official Nintendo account talked about how the successor to the Nintendo Switch will be announced within the fiscal year, which I believe is up to the end of March 2025. So we are going to be getting an announcement for new hardware from Nintendo within about 10 months or so, giving us a pretty wide time frame. They also announced that a Direct is going to be happening in June that will only focus on games for the Switch and will not talk about the Switch 2 at all, which I think is very, very interesting to announce an announcement of sorts. They're just saying that a Direct is going to be announced. They'll only be talking about software for the current generation of Nintendo consoles. So I think I wanted to dissect this and give you my thoughts on what the Direct is going to hold. So first and foremost, the fact that they called this a successor to the Nintendo Switch indicates that this will be something at least very similar to the Switch, if not just a direct sequel. They clearly found the right formula. The Switch is on track to become the best-selling console of all time, at the very least eclipse the Nintendo DS in terms of sales. I don't see much in the future that suggests that the Switch will not eclipse the PlayStation 2 at some point. It's still selling incredibly well. They have a better time window now with the Switch 2 coming out. After the Switch 2 comes out, I'm sure they'll keep selling Nintendo Switches and people will still buy them. So I don't see a future where the Nintendo Switch doesn't become the best-selling console of all time. And I'm guessing that Nintendo is giving themselves this time period, since most reports are saying that the Switch 2 will launch in March to May, maybe, I think is the range I've seen the most consistently now after the supposed delay from September of this year. They're probably giving themselves the best time window that they have just in case they need to delay it any further into the future. So they've got this 10-month window they can say we're going to announce the hardware, so if anything comes up, they can comfortably move it to summer of next year and not have any problems. They don't have to delay the console. If they announced it in June and then they had production issues, then they would have to delay it, and people don't like delays. So giving themselves more time while also telling us that they have a time frame for when they're going to announce it is a really smart move in my opinion. Nintendo really wants to get this right. You've seen lots of companies do poorly after doing really well with a console. Nintendo has seen this themselves. After the Super Nintendo, the Nintendo 64 and the GameCube did not do super well. After the Wii was a massive success, even beating the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360, the Wii U was an abysmal failure. So I don't think they want to repeat the mistakes of the past. Same thing with PlayStation. They went from the PS2 selling 150 something million units to the PlayStation 3 starting off incredibly slowly. So Nintendo wants to give themselves enough time to get this right. Not only do they want to announce it and give you the best features that they possibly can with this hardware, they also want to make sure that they have enough consoles ready for people that want to buy the system. The Switch was notorious, along with like the Wii, for being really sold out and hard to get early on. I think they want to combat these issues and make sure that they have enough stock for as many people as want to buy this console. I got very lucky and I got a Switch day one. There are tons of people that didn't and didn't get it for a while as well. It was a difficult console to find, and they want to make sure that more people have in their hands the console, so not only more people can enjoy it, more people can experience the new games that are coming out, and so they can sell more software along with the hardware. If they are limited to a certain number of stock, then they can't sell as many games. Pretty logical. I think this is a great move from Nintendo. I think tempering our expectations, letting us know we're only talking about games and releasing games this year for the Switch and nothing for the successor, I think is a really great move to let us know, so we know exactly what to expect. Here's what I think is going to happen with the Nintendo Direct in the next month. I think it'll happen probably early June, maybe mid-June. This is kind of the E3 era, back when E3 was a thing, when people would get really excited about new releases, typically new hardware, which is, again, why Nintendo is tempering expectations. This is usually the season where something like this would be announced. But making it just focus on software, I think, is a great plan. I think that they will focus primarily on remasters, small remakes of Game Boy Advance games and GameCube era games. I think these make the most sense. We just saw a release of Mario vs. Donkey Kong, a remake of the Game Boy Advance game that sold incredibly well. I didn't think there was a much hype going on behind this game. I loved the original and I was excited about it, but I didn't buy it day one. But apparently in just a couple of weeks, they sold over 1 million units. That's really awesome. Another game that was really fantastic, not a port or a remaster, but an original, was Princess Peach Showtime. Her first outing since Super Princess Peach. A smaller title as well, despite being this brand new game, this new property with an existing character that's very a fan favorite. It sold extremely well as well. Within the first 10 days, I think it sold over 1.2 million units. So this is the kind of content I expect for the Switch moving forward. Ports of things like Game Boy Advance and GameCube games, maybe even Wii games. I think the most likely candidates for this treatment are Wind Waker and Twilight Princess, which are the only holdovers from the Wii U that got ported over from the GameCube and Wii and never made it over to the Switch, despite being great sellers on the Wii U and would be prime for the Switch. This makes sense for their long-term goals as well. If they want to tide us over till a new announcement that could take all the way up until March, two new Zelda games, even if they're ports of old games, there are beloved classics and people love Zelda. This would be a great way to mitigate some of that time we have to wait. I also think ports of some classic GBA games or remasters, remakes, whatever you want to do with them, of Metroid Fusion and Metroid Zero Mission would be incredible. People absolutely love Dread, myself included. It was a great return to form for the 2D franchise for Metroid, and people really took to it in a big way. Has new combat, great visuals. A remake of Metroid Zero Mission and or Fusion with the style of Dread and the combat and everything would go so hard, especially if we're not going to get a Metroid Prime 4 announcement. Which leads me to my next prediction. I think Metroid Prime 2 Remastered will absolutely come at this Direct, either Shadow Drop day of or shortly after. It only makes sense that they're paving the way for Metroid Prime 4. I think if they're going to announce Metroid Prime 4 for the Nintendo Switch and not the Nintendo Switch 2, this is their really last chance to do it. If they want a big marquee title to tide us over, Metroid Prime 4 seems like the prime example here. There's no other game that I can think of that's been hyped up so much that they have on their docket that really even comes close to something that Metroid Prime 4 could do for numbers for their console. Just like Tears of the Kingdom was a great late launch for the Nintendo Switch because it had so much upside. It sold over 20 million copies, and it's coming at the very end of the life cycle for the Switch. Great idea to release it late on in the Switch life cycle instead of holding out for the Switch 2, because it's given us such an immense experience to tide us over. Metroid Prime 4 could be that release, and if Metroid Prime 4 is announced, I suspect 2 and 3 Remastered will be announced and dropped at this Direct as well. If Metroid Prime 4 is not announced, I suspect that it will be either a cross-generation game or a Switch 2 exclusive. And if that's the case, they will only give us Metroid Prime 2 Remastered and give us Metroid Prime 3 Remastered later down the line, again, to tide us over until Metroid Prime 4. So that's my prediction for Metroid. I think it will be a big day for them. Either Metroid Prime 2 Remastered for sure, possibly 3 if Metroid Prime 4 is announced for the end of the year or early in 2025. If not, I suspect something like a Game Boy port or remake would be really fantastic as well. If we got Metroid Prime 2 Remastered and a Fusion remake, I would be over the moon, especially with how they would launch Metroid Prime and Metroid Fusion so close to each other back on the Game Boy Advance and the GameCube era. I think that would be really, really cool. So I think Metroid will make a good splash. They've been kind of on a tear lately. Metroid Dread sold like crazy. Metroid Prime Remastered went over incredibly well. Everybody bought that game, got rave reviews. I think it was a great way for Nintendo to gauge interest in the property itself. So I think that they would be smart to capitalize on the interest and the momentum that they have from those games. I also, like I said, I would love some more ports from the GameCube and Wii. I would love Beautiful Joe and Beautiful Joe 2. Those would be surprise ones. If we got remasters of those, those would go over extremely well. Other games from that era would also go really well. The Game Boy Advance has like Golden Sun. You've got, I think the original WarioWare would be amazing. I love that game. A remake of that would be so much fun. But one that would really win the Direct for so many people, and it's one that we've been waiting for forever and we really want to see, is Mother 3. Give us not just a port of Mother 3 in the Game Boy Advance style. Why don't you just give us a remake? Maybe that's something that they're brewing up. If they launch that, along with any other standalone title, we would have the most content we could possibly hope for. Mother 3 would go so hard. I'm not optimistic at all that Mother 3 is coming at any point, especially a remake. But if Nintendo really wanted to give us a surprise and shock us and really give us something to celebrate while they prep for the Switch 2, Mother 3 would definitely be the Game Boy Advance title to focus on. So I hope they have been doing something with that just for the Mother 3 fans. I've played the game. I really enjoyed it. I'm not the biggest Mother or Earthbound fan, but I understand the hype behind it. And other RPGs, like I said, Golden Sun would go over super well. Fire Emblem. I think those would give us tons of content to play on while we're waiting for the Switch 2, and to really utilize the life cycle of the Nintendo Switch. It's clear that Nintendo doesn't want the Switch to die off and then launch the Switch 2, like have just breadcrumbs all the way until the Switch 2. It looks like they want to give us some really solid experiences going in. And again, I think the Game Boy Advance, GameCube, even Wii era are great games to cherry pick if you're going to do a lot of remasters or games in that style. Shorter experiences that are really meaningful to play. Super fun. I think of the Game Boy Advance era because they have so many games that only take 4 to 6 hours to beat. The Castlevanias, you've got the Mario and Luigi games, you've got the Metroid games. These games are perfect for the Switch because they give us just enough to get us excited about stuff, but then not enough to like carry our interest too far so that we don't get excited about the Switch 2. I think that they have a delicate line to walk, but I think Nintendo is doing a great job here. They don't always make the best decisions, but I think that they are truly being as careful as possible so they can make the best decision for the Switch, and then going into the Switch 2. Give us a lot of momentum riding into the announcement, and then get us really excited as we get the brand new games, these bigger, beefy experiences like your Mario games, like a Donkey Kong game, like maybe even a Zelda remake that we can really sink our teeth into. We've been playing these smaller bit-sized games, and now we want the big stuff. I think this is a good strategy. This is kind of my prediction for it. I think we'll also get lots of indie games. We'll probably get announcements for Hades 2, other really exciting games. Hopefully, I know a lot of people, myself included, Silksong will make an appearance. Hasn't in like 5 years now. We're coming up on 6, I think. Where it's been a long time. Something like that, again, an indie developer making a long anticipated game for the Switch would also be fantastic. I think we'll get tons of other things that are just good to mediocre that will get announced as well, and we shouldn't expect all of the things that I've talked about to be announced, but I think a healthy amount of them will. This is a big direct in June. This is the E3 era. We don't have new hardware to talk about, so I think they want to come out the gate swinging for the final stretch, pushing all the way to the end. So I think we can expect a little bit more than normal. I know typically we want to temper our expectations for directs and announcements like this, but I think this time we can bring them up just a little bit because we need enough experiences to tide us over until the end of the fiscal year. So that's my thoughts on the Switch 2 announcement. I think it's so funny that they just casually dropped the like a soft announcement that it's in production on their Twitter, and that a direct's coming, even though they haven't announced when it's coming. It's just pretty funny to me. I'm glad I got to talk about it. Thank you so much, and I'll see you on the next one.